Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to my talk as part of this CBD Live. Just thank you again to Roisin, to the cannabis team, to Voxpo as well for putting on this fabulous event. I'm sure you'll agree that it's been 3 days. We're in the third day now, aren't we, of a really amazing event with some great speakers and some great content. So my name is Dr. Elizabeth Phillips, and today I'm really excited to be talking about the endocannabinoid system in health and disease, because it's a real passion of mine. I'm what's called an integrated or a functional medicine practitioner. So I have a medical background, but I now really view the body from a very integrated perspective. And of course, as we're probably all familiar with, the endocannabinoid system is a really important part of the overall balance and homeostasis that we have within the body. So today I'm going to be taking you through the endocannabinoid system, really bringing us up to speed. I know that there's been, through several other talks, mention of the endocannabinoid system at different levels. So we're going to be looking at the endocannabinoid system, and then we're going to be looking a bit more specifically at some of the latest research around the endocannabinoid system in gut health and brain health as well, because my other background is as a clinical neuropharmacologist. So I'm a real specialist in cannabinoid medicine and how cannabinoids work within the brain, within the body as well. So I'm really excited to be sharing this information with you today, and please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A as well. I'll probably take a look at those towards the end so that we can get through some of the content first of all. So when we are trained in the medical profession, in a clinical setting, we are trained in lots of different systems, and everything from the digestive system through to the lymphatics, respiratory, reproductive systems. And of course, we have some really fantastic and wonderful specialists across the UK, across the world, in all of these different systems. But I think, and of course I do, but I think we're really missing a trick if we are not considering the endocannabinoid system as a clinician. Now, I know this brings up the question of training as well, and how do we fit the endocannabinoid system into existing medical training? And that's kind of a discussion that we can have sort of later on. But I also think that it's very important that we do begin to start introducing this, because there's no doubt that the endocannabinoid system is an integral part to all of the other systems in our bodies. And it was only discovered in around about the 1990s, early 1990s, which also really excites me as a practitioner, as a clinician, because the fact that we can sort of discover new systems in the body. But actually, this isn't something that's just evolved over the last few decades, last few centuries. The endocannabinoid system is something that we can find in sea urchins, way back, in fossils and sort of way before sort of human life existed, as we know it now. So the endocannabinoid system is a real evolutionary system. So, that shows quite how important it is, the way that it's evolved through the body and, really touches upon all of these systems that we see here. And I think, one of the reasons that it's not been so well mapped out is because it's actually very diffuse. It doesn't look like the lymphatic system. It doesn't look like the cardiovascular system that we can sort of visualize in the body with all of the neat vessels and vessels, arteries, nerves and the like that we can visualize. But what we have with the endocannabinoid system is a very diffuse system. And of course, it's early days with the research. We're really playing catch up. So actually, what we're finding is that we're adding more and more into our understanding of the endocannabinoid system right now. So the endocannabinoid system is, comprised, and initially we sort of thought, say in the early 90s, identified two cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2. But actually we now know that there are a number of other different receptors, potentially a CB3 receptor as well coming on board, but a number of other different receptors that are responsive to our body's own endocannabinoids. So we actually produce molecules, endocannabinoids in our bodies that stimulate our endocannabinoid system. So I know, we've been talking a huge amount, and I was chairing a panel yesterday around the French pilot study, cannabis pilot study. So we've talked a huge amount about medicinal cannabis, cannabinoids, and so we'll come on to that. But I want us to really understand that our body produces its own endocannabinoids. So actually we can be influencing our endocannabinoid system, not just through exogenous or phytocannabinoids that we find in cannabis strains. So we've got cannabinoid receptors, CB1, CB2. We have other receptors that are responsive to these endocannabinoids, and within the endocannabinoid system, these are G protein coupled receptors, for example, PPARs as well, ion channels. We know, for example, that endocannabinoids can bind to 5-HT or serotonin receptors, certain subsets within the central nervous system. So it's very exciting, really beginning to see how the endocannabinoid system basically has fingers in lots of pies, really is involved across the body. So we have a number of different endocannabinoids, as I said, that we produce, one of them being anandamide, and that's actually the Sanskrit word for bliss, based around bliss, which I think is a beautiful description, because we know, how anandamide and endocannabinoids work. And actually, when you hear of the phrase the runner's high, if you've ever experienced it yourself, when you've been exercising and you get to that sort of state of real euphoria, it's quite often called the runner's high. Used to be thought to be down to adrenaline, but it actually is about around the release of anandamide, and anandamide triggering our endocannabinoid system. So, we can see, quite how important the endocannabinoids are, not just in physical balance, and we'll look at this in a moment, but also to our emotional health as well. So anandamide and 2-AG are the most common endocannabinoids. As I said, there's always more coming on board with greater understanding of this system. And then the third part of our endocannabinoid system that's spread throughout our bodies are enzymes. So these enzymes, particular subsets, are responsible for the regulation, if you like, of our own endocannabinoid levels. So one of them, the FAR enzyme, the fatty acid amide hydrolase enzyme, is particularly prominent, which is involved all around the regulation and the breakdown of anandamide. But there are other enzymes as well that are involved. So I wasn't going to go into detail today, but happy to talk about this afterwards, or take this offline. So as I said, I think really our understanding is taking a little while, because we can't visualize it as neatly as we can as other systems within the body. And so on the right hand side of this image, we can see the distribution of just the CB1 and the CB2 receptors throughout the body. And primarily CB1 is found throughout the brain and central nervous systems. That includes the spinal column and the nerves there, but also to a lesser extent in other tissues as well. And then CB2 has been sequenced and is found mostly, and again, give or take, in the peripheral organs, but especially associated with the immune system as well. So, already, we're getting this understanding of, how important the endocannabinoid system is. But of course, it's different in everybody as well. So, there are going to be genetic differences as well. People express different levels of the FAR enzyme, for example. There's a case study up in Scotland at the moment of a lady that, just doesn't feel sort of pain because she actually has, different levels to the population of the FAR enzyme. So she has, sort of much higher levels of anandamide in her system. So, it's what's called SNPs. Our DNA, kind of expresses how or demonstrates how our endocannabinoid system is going to be expressed. So, everybody is going to have different levels. And that's, to my mind, why cannabinoid medicine needs to be very personalized, and, why it's very exciting that we're getting all of these different cultivars that are coming out in different medicinal cannabis products, where we're looking at the ratios of THC and CBD, and, really understanding a lot more about the rarer phytocannabinoids as well, like CBG and CBN, because, we've got so much, sort of adaptation that we can do within the endocannabinoid system within individuals as well. So the endocannabinoid system should be a primary health target. There's no doubt about it. As I said, there's a huge amount of education still to be done. I take that sort of partly, as my responsibility, as we all do within the endocannabinoid community. We all have our roles to play, and mine is very much around, I see, sort of research, translational research and education around endocannabinoid system and the interactions of cannabinoids. And so, of course, the fact that cannabinoid receptors alone, the CB1 and CB2 receptors, are found so widely and vastly spread across the body, means that they really are super important. So we know that the endocannabinoid system is required for, as I've mentioned, homeostasis. So that's the returning the body to balance. And that's just so key. As we say, the body wants to be well. The state of disease is not a state the body wants to be in. So the endocannabinoid system plays an integral role in returning our body to that state of balance. So that means it's involved in sleep-wake cycle, in metabolism, in appetite, in fertility, in blood pressure, in blood consistency, all of those, really important areas, as well as, of course, of being found, within the gut, within the reproductive organs, the immune system. So, we've got a system here that is just absolutely key and integral to be considering as clinicians, as practitioners. So let's just sort of drill down a little bit. That's kind of a brief overview, I guess, of our endocannabinoid system. And, I really wanted us to remember the endocannabinoid system because, we talk so much about CBD as food supplements or medicinal cannabis, the umbrella term of so many different cannabinoid-based products. But, they work within the body in this particular system. So, we need to understand the system. And it's kind of quite unusual because, in pharmacological terms, we normally, are looking at the system first, and then we look at the compounds that are going to, produce change and produce health. But what we've got this way is that we've got medicinal cannabis products and CBD, and they've got a boom in products, quite rightly so. But at the same time, we need to understand more about how they're working within the body. And then that way, when we get the real world evidence, the real world data, the possibility of more randomized clinical control trials, RCTs coming on board, that's when we can, get wider access, certainly to the medications as well. So, it's all part of the process, which is taking years. Of course it is, but actually that's because, this is a very new system. And so it's been taking quite a while to play this catch up. So the ECS and pain, I thought I'd focus in on sort of pain and gut health because, certainly we heard from Dr. Mikhail Sodergren yesterday in one of the panels at CBD Live that in the Sapphire Clinic that he runs through Medicinal Cannabis Clinic up in Scotland, that 65% of his patients are coming to him with pain, chronic pain conditions. And, pain is a very, very complex, very chronic condition for many people. And, importantly, it drastically impacts the quality of life. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to improve, isn't it? Is our quality of our lives, how we feel, the physical, sort of interactions that we can have, and that we can sort of get on with our lives as well. So it's really important that if we understand a little bit more about the endocannabinoid system and pain, we can understand a little bit more then about how we can use and tweak this system to help us really regulate the pain response. So the endocannabinoid system is found throughout the central nervous system, and I've said before that this includes the brain and the spinal cord. And it's also found in the immune cells that respond when the body is injured or invaded. So this can be acutely, we can have an acute injury, such as through sports, for example, or, we can have, sort of chronic inflammation as well. And I'll come on to chronic inflammation when we talk a bit about the gut. So we know then that CB1, CB2 receptors are found throughout the central nervous system and, of course, also throughout the peripheral nervous system as well. And so our body produces endocannabinoids to, really help modulate these nervous systems and immune cells to really help balance our response to acute and chronic pain. So this is very prevalent in conditions such as arthritis, for example, fibromyalgia as well, very common condition with very high levels of chronic pain, and of course sports injuries as well, where we find this. So what we find though, and this is the interesting bit, is not only is the endocannabinoid system important in terms of our physiological response to pain, how our body biochemically responds to pain. So endocannabinoids actually reduce the numbers, the levels of pro-inflammatory mediators, for example, certain cytokines, for example, that are involved, and prostaglandins that are involved in our inflammatory response. So our endocannabinoid system actually regulates the physiological and biochemical response to pain. But also, and this is what I love the most, is that the endocannabinoid system, CB1 receptors in particular, are found within regions of the brain that are responsible for our perception of emotion, the amygdala, for example. So what we find is if we're regulating the endocannabinoid system, we're not only modulating our biochemical response, the physical response to pain, but also our emotional response. And I think any, any practitioner, any clinician, any specialist will say that actually the emotional response to pain is, as important, if not more important, that we're looking at as actually, what is creating and causing the pain to start with as well. So, what we've got here then is the potential a system which we are already modulating, we're already regulating through the use of cannabinoids, through the use of CBD food supplements as well. But we've got something that we can, actually use that is not a blunt instrument. And what I mean by that is, a lot of medications, on the market now, especially opioids, pain medications, they're stacked full of very, very sort of severe side effects, and they're also a very blunt tool. They switch something off, they switch something on. That's kind of how a lot of standard drugs work, but they blanket that as well. So what they're doing is they're actually blanket blocking, for example, certain pathways in the body, and hence the sheer number of side effects that we see in a lot of pain medication. But by modulating the endocannabinoid system, because it's subtly working at lots of different levels, the immune system level, the central nervous system level, the peripheral nervous system level, all of these, what we've got is an ability to actually modulate. And what's happening quite often as well is that not all cannabinoids are direct agonists. Something like THC, is a direct agonist, at its cannabinoid target. But we find that certain cannabinoids are partial agonists. So this means that they have different ways of eliciting a response within the endocannabinoid system. And CBD, for example, can actually naturally raise the levels of our body's own endocannabinoids as well, such as anandamide. So it's a very subtle effect when we're working with the endocannabinoid system, when we're working with medicinal cannabis, when we're working with CBD as food supplements. So again, we've got the potential here, and already seeing this in the research that's coming to light, that actually we're able to modulate the body at very many different levels, which overall is going to produce a much sounder, more robust effect on our health. So, as I said, if we are working at the system of the level of the endocannabinoid system, we're not only reducing our physical response to pain in terms of reducing inflammation, in terms of sort of reducing things, other substances that can cause pain, such as substance P, which is released within our in our central nervous system. So what we can find then is we're also balancing our emotional response, how we feel to pain as well. But I've already talked quite a bit about CBD, about other cannabinoids as well that we find. And of course, they are very important. They can play a very important role in balancing and modulating our endocannabinoid system. But actually, with our endocannabinoid system, we can be taking a much more holistic approach as well. And we should be, there's no doubt about it, that we shouldn't be relying on, sort of medication solely as a route to gaining better health. There's no doubt that medicinal cannabis is going to be helping in a huge number of areas, but we should be still looking at how underlying ways that we can go about supporting. And as an integrative medicine approach, I really place a huge importance on diet and lifestyle as well. And so diet is super important with our endocannabinoid system, because our endocannabinoids, anandamide and 2-AG, for example, they are actually special types of fats, fatty acids. So we can actually, eat the right types of fats in our diet, and this is going to be helping support our body's own natural production of endocannabinoids, as well as a whole host of other beneficial reasons as well, which I won't go into today. But what's particularly important are things like essential fatty acids. So that's our omega-3 essential fatty acids that we find in things like oily fish, for example, certain seeds and nuts as well. So omega-3 essential fatty acids, as well as omega-6 essential fatty acids, are really important. And we can only really get those through the diet. So, already we should be looking at the diet as a route to supporting our endocannabinoid system. Of course, we also know that omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acids in the right ratios, the right types, are super important for aspects such as cardiovascular health and our immune system as well. Also, it's very important to be increasing fiber, soluble fiber, and we find this particularly in plant matter, so vegetables. So a diet rich in vegetables and plant matter has been shown to convey health on a number of different levels. And I'm actually going to come on and talk about this a bit more when I talk about the endocannabinoid system and gut health. So I'll leave that for now, but I will explain a bit more as to why we should be increasing our plant intake to really be supporting our endocannabinoid system as well. And we can actually find, sort of endocannabinoid mimetic mimetics as well in the diet. You know, something like dark chocolate, raw cacao contains anandamide-like compounds. So we can be eating endocannabinoid mimetics, you know, endocannabinoid-like compounds to be supporting our endocannabinoid system as well. And I'm personally a real fan of dark chocolates, daily bit of dark chocolates, and, you know, it certainly can, you know, sort of help you feel better as well, can't it? So, you know, we know that we're supporting our endocannabinoid system on this level. But I also want to mention, as a very integrative approach to supporting our endocannabinoid system, and, you know, this isn't just around the endocannabinoid system and pain, you know, this is the ECS in general, is our lifestyle. And the reason being is that stress greatly impacts really every aspect of our body, but, you know, increasing research is showing that it's impacting our endocannabinoid system as well. So there was a relatively recent study looking at chronic levels of cortisol, and that's the hormone that's released by adrenal glands, which supports our sort of stress response. So cortisol per se is not the baddie, it's not a bad hormone, it's a hormone that we need, that's released, you know, at the appropriate times, in appropriate responses for our body to function, you know, to have a healthy stress response. But it's when we get chronic exposure to cortisol, when we live under chronic stress, you know, whatever that may be for us, you know, whatever combination of stress factors are impacting us. And that chronic stress that increases levels and keeps cortisol raised within the bodies, that is when the red flags begin to fly and our health can begin to really be impacted. And it's been shown that chronic levels of cortisol exposure actually impacts our endocannabinoid system by reducing the levels of anandamide in particular and downregulating CB1 receptors. So, you know, we can see then that the endocannabinoid system is greatly impacted by stress, as well as, of course, you know, for all of the other integrated reasons, the other systems that the endocannabinoid system is supported in. So I would really recommend, you know, if we're looking, and I will talk more about the Bliss program, which is a program I've set up through my own clinic, looking at the endocannabinoid system support primarily, but how stress management is so important. So I know there's been a meditation session, hasn't there, within CBD Live. So, you know, anything that we can be doing to manage what I call the drains and gains, you know, what are the things that are draining you and what are the gains, you know, that you have in your everyday life, in your life that are actually promoting, you know, sort of a relaxed or healthy response. So, you know, there's all sorts of ways around we can be supporting our ECS. And of course, as I mentioned, we've got CBD as food supplements and medicinal cannabis products of all varying ratios of cannabinoids as well that can be used very successfully alongside these dietary and lifestyle management as well. And from within my clinic, you know, patients that I see, it's really, you know, when I see, you know, such great change using cannabinoids, and there's no doubt, you know, really most people respond very well to cannabinoids and see a very positive, you know, relatively swift response as well. And that's because our endocannabinoid system just needs so much support. You know, I think, you know, people are seeing these great changes because, you know, of the support that is needed on a daily level. So kind of moving then into the ECS and gut health, and you know, as I say, with pain, you know, really that is, you know, one of the top conditions, top outcomes as well that's looked at it in many studies in you know, sort of better routes of supporting, and also because the, you know, current pharmaceutical options, you know, really are so severe and you know, can be very life limiting as well in a number of ways because of certain side effects and the like. So, you know, really using cannabinoids and endocannabinoid system support, you know, is going to be a route to pain management. But I would also say the reason why I wanted to talk about gut health is that, you know, we're seeing an increasing prevalence of gut disorders coming into the population as well. And certainly because of the integrated medical approach that I take within my clinic, get a huge number of gut health problems as well. So irritable bowel syndrome, for example, is rife throughout the population. Certainly inflammatory bowel diseases are on the increase as well. So we can really be considering the endocannabinoid system as part of the digestive system as well. And this, you know, nice little sort of infographic kind of really demonstrates how widespread the ECS is throughout our gut as well. So we can see on the left-hand side, the CB1 receptors, just kind of outlined in blue, present in the stomach at the top there, right through the small and the large intestines as well, you know, as well as being present on various other glands and organs associated with the digestive tract, such as pancreas, for example, gallbladder and liver. But within the gut, we can see that CB1 is kind of responsible for muscle tone. So, you know, that's very important because really our digestive tract functions on healthy wave of muscular contraction. So, you know, there's a number of different factors that we need for healthy digestion, but certainly muscle tone is super important throughout all of the digestive tract. We can see also the endocannabinoid system is involved in gastric acid secretion, gastric damage, gastric emptying. So really supporting stomach function is, you know, so key. And we know, you know, how important gastric acid production is, not just for digestive processes in breaking down food, but also for killing off, you know, pathogenic bacteria that is going to sort of potentially create imbalances in our own gut microbiome, which I'm going to come on and talk about as well. So, you know, stomach health is so important on a number of different levels, right through, as I say, into the digestive tract, the ileum, the small intestine, the colon, the large intestine. But not only is it muscle tone and function, but also inflammation. So there's all sorts of communication going on at a gut level between the ECS and inflammatory response as well. And as I said, there is a huge rise in inflammatory bowel disorders like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis that I'm seeing more and more of within my clinic. And you know, there's no doubt that, you know, we should be considering the ECS as part of this to be supporting the inflammatory response within the digestive tract. There's also studies, you know, very early stage studies, and I would say, you know, a lot of these are early stage, but some very promising results looking at the round of growth of tumours, you know, especially colon cancer. Colon tumours around cannabinoid products. So again, you know, we can see that cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system, you know, supporting, you know, healthy gut function from that point of view. And then, of course, you know, we've got CB1 receptors, but CB2 receptors as well, you know, working within the gut itself. So again, you know, considering endocannabinoid system within our guts is a super key important. And why is that as well? Not only important for our gut health, but also for our brain health. And of course, I can't resist bringing things back to brain health with my clinical neuroscience background. But again, you know, we're seeing an increasing rise in, you know, sort of mood disorders, emotional health, you know, on a personal level, on a collective level over the last year, 18 months in particular. And we can't be thinking of brain health without thinking of gut health. You know, really, as integrative practitioners, you know, a lot of my work is bringing it back to the gut. So even if someone is presenting with rheumatoid arthritis, what is happening within the gut? And why is that? Well, the obvious one, of course, is that's where we are absorbing the nutrients, you know, and that our body needs from food, from supplements, in order for our body to be, you know, functioning, you know, having a healthy, balance and functioning immune system, cardiovascular system, all of those areas. But also, of course, what's really important is our gut microbiome, so our gut bacteria. And there's a huge wealth of information coming into play now, quite how important our gut microbiome or our gut bacteria is. It's what influences really every aspect of what's happening within our body, not just at a physical level, but at an emotional level, psychological level as well, because of the direct connection between the gut and the brain. In fact, you know, we've got a direct connection in the form of a nerve. The vagus nerve directly connects our gut and our brain. So that's a very important connection, direct connection. But also what's released by our gut bacteria that enters our bloodstream then also circulates into our bodies and circulates into our brains as well. So, you know, we get this direct and indirect communication between our gut bacteria, what they're releasing, what they're sensing, and what's happening within our brain health as well. And there was a really neat study just last year, actually, from a group released in Nature paper, open access, so the reference is below there, showing that actually in mice with an imbalance in gut bacteria, what's known as dysbiosis, and certain strains of lactobacillus bacteria in particular, reduced the production of what's called short-chain fatty acid metabolites by the gut bacteria, and in turn, this reduced the endocannabinoid levels within these mice. And this went on, and they looked at various studies, and this was linked to depressive behavior, to depression in certain tasks that mice have to perform. And actually, by transplanting from a fecal transplant the microbiome of those depressed mice into healthy mice, they found that those healthy mice also became depressed, exhibited depressed activities within the tests that they went under. So that's really interesting. We can see a direct correlation between our gut microbiome and our brain health, our emotional health, but relating at an endocannabinoid level. So why is that? Well, short chain fatty acid metabolites are precursors to our endocannabinoids. So again, by supporting our gut bacteria, we're supporting our endocannabinoid system and we're supporting our psychological health. We can see how everything's linked now. It's just one big jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? So very, very important. And how can we support our gut bacteria? Well, this brings me back to the diet. There is, really no doubt about it that our diet is the one key factor in improving our gut microbiome, improving the levels of the beneficial gut bacteria and reducing the levels of pathogenic gut bacteria, the baddies, basically. So, we should be increasing plant matter in our diets. These are things like vegetables in particular, but pulses, grains, lentils, whatever, we can do to introduce the soluble fibers in particular, but insoluble fiber is just as important to really be feeding our gut microbiome, because our gut microbiome really lives off these particular types of fibers and plant matters. And diets high in processed foods, high in sugary foods, low in fiber, sees a really, really less diverse gut microbiome, because you can very simply through fecal matter assess the levels and the quality and the diversity of the gut microbiome, and it's diversity that is the key. The diversity of our diet creates diversity in the types and numbers of our beneficial gut bacteria. So we can see then a direct link between our diet and the endocannabinoid system at that level as well. So, this is how I work within my clinic. This is what I'm really passionate about educating, is that, how we can go about supporting our endocannabinoid system from really a multi-layered approach. So I'm going to leave it there for kind of the data. I can see some questions coming in, but, I really see a huge importance place, that we need to place the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, front and center of health programs. We need to be considering lifestyle and diet from an integrative point of view, but also the personalized cannabinoid regime playing a support, really supporting endocannabinoid system balance. And that's why I'm very keen, around the use of cannabinoids, either, as we say, from a medicinal cannabinoid, cannabis type product, or from CBD food supplement type product. That's a lot more accessible for many people. I work with CBD food supplements within my clinic as well, because that's a very accessible way of supporting the endocannabinoid system at various levels. But of course, we need this continued research, translational research that I'm doing, and really with all the wonderful professionals that we've seen at a clinical through to the business level, all of the work that's being done by various medicinal cannabis companies, pharma companies as well, the green pharma side, we're really seeing a very exciting boom and increase in research around the power and potential of cannabinoid medicine in acute and chronic diseases. And it's chronic diseases, I think, that are the real issue. We're seeing a rise in the non-communicable diseases in the UK. So these are diseases that aren't caused by an infectious agent. So things like cardiovascular disease, liver disease, for example, the rise in dementias, that's a particular specialism that I place within my clinic, around the sort of brain health aspect, the rise in dementias and chronic trauma injuries as well that we're seeing in sports, for example, is really placing, a great impact on how we should be supporting the endocannabinoid system as part of a program. So if you're interested, please do get in touch. My web address is there as well. And of course, you can get in touch with me through any of the social media channels as well. So I can see some questions that have come in. So let's have a start. So you mentioned diet. Are there any foods that aren't supportive of the endocannabinoid system? Yeah, absolutely. So, going into huge detail, certainly we need to be, really wary of things that are perturbing the balance within the body. So I would always say, yes, alcohol. We need to be very careful around our use of alcohol. As fun as it may be, it is actually a toxin. It is a poison to our bodies, for starters. So I'm not going to get on my nutritional therapy, my nutrition practitioner high horse here around alcohol, but it's certainly one that is impacting. In terms of direct impact, I believe the research will kind of uncover at what level there. But of course, what alcohol is really doing as well is working against the body. So it's impacting our sleep quality, for example, our ability to sleep, our ability to detoxify within the liver, as efficiently as and effectively as if alcohol isn't present in the body. So yes, absolutely. I would also say, things like sugar, high sugar foods, high processed foods as well. So we kind of talk about processed foods, but where I'm coming in at as well is what we call ultra processed foods. So we're getting foods that are so far removed from this kind of original food source, and these quite often contain very very poor sorry, there we go. Very poor bad levels of bad fats, and fats that have been altered in the food manufacturing process. And when those fats get into our bodies, they can disrupt cell membranes, for example. And I didn't sort of really haven't talked about cell membranes, but cell membranes are responsible for providing us with some of those beneficial fats that I talked about, that are precursors to endocannabinoids. And of course, also we need healthy cell membranes in order for our cannabinoid receptors to work effectively and efficiently as well. So our endocannabinoid system relies on healthy cell membranes. And if we're eating foods with damaged fats, trans fats, for example, fats that have been heated to high temperatures and been chemically altered, so certain room temperature oils, that are normally oils at room temperature that are then converted into these hard block fats. I'm not a fan of those for reasons the fats have been damaged. So yes, absolutely, I would say processed fats, sugary foods, on a regular basis, all of these are going to be impacting our ability for our endocannabinoid system to be functioning effectively, but also the indirect effect that our endocannabinoid system will have under stress, because a poor diet places stress in the body. Poor diet is a stress factor. Our body's having to work really hard to kind of right itself and to keep itself in balance if it's having a poor diet. So again, we need to think about stress not just being something that impacts us, a work meeting or family event, whatever your stress, main stress factor might be, but actually all of the other stresses that we place within our bodies as well. So we've got a really interesting question actually. I like this one. So do we produce higher amounts of cortisol in the morning? And if so, would this be the optimal time of day to take CBD? So yeah, really great questions. So cortisol, yes, is not just a hormone that's responsible for, sort of managing the stress response, if you like, within our bodies. It also helps balance the immune system, a healthy immune response, but it's also in part about what's called our circadian rhythms. So our circadian rhythms really is how our body responds on a sort of 24-hour cycle. So our circadian rhythms are really taking us back to our natural state. We should all be working a little bit more to sort of balance our 24-hour body cycle, and the endocannabinoid system is right at the heart of that as well. That homeostasis, that balance that we're trying to achieve in the body, that's what the endocannabinoid system is really working to support. So cortisol actually fluctuates. A normal healthy cortisol response fluctuates throughout the day. So what we find is that we have higher levels of cortisol in the morning because that helps wake us up. And then across the course of the day, a healthy cortisol response, we should see it tailoring off, dropping down to lower levels. And it should really be at the lowest level in the evening, because that is going to be part of the response that our body signals that we're ready to fall asleep. So cortisol peaks in the morning, early in the morning, sort of 6, 7 o'clock with a healthy response, and drops down through the course of the day. Now, whether that sort of matches with CBD, that's a really interesting one, because CBD can be taken in the evenings and that can help with sleep. And certainly that's what I find. That's when I take my CBD. And what is happening there is that CBD isn't acting as a sedative. And that's really key, because of course people are also taking CBD during the day as well to help, sort of manage pain, to help manage mood as well. Really the 3 key things around CBD food supplements would be pain, sleep and mood. Those are the 3 that I find people use for. So what I would say is that CBD, there's no sort of optimal time, to take it, in terms of no one time that everybody should be taking, because you're taking it according to what your body and where your body needs that balance around the endocannabinoid system. But of course, if you've got a sort of a healthy cortisol response, then, that's going to be, a good time to take it would be first thing in the morning. But it's not directly linked. I hope that makes sense in that, what you're looking at is when you're taking CBD, you're taking it, around for different aspects, and it's different systems that are going to be impacted. So, there's not a direct correlation, if you like, between sort of CBD levels and endocannabinoid system, cortisol levels, sorry, CBD and cortisol levels. So great question though, thanks for that. So how do you know if the stress you're feeling is chronic stress? Wow, good question as well. So, I mean, if you want, there are also types of sort of questionnaires that you can, self-rate and self-map. They're easily accessible online. You can, of course, also use things like, Fitbits and Garmin's and, all of the other, sort of apps out there that, to sort of monitor maybe aspects such as, blood pressure is a good one that can indicate your heart rate as well, can indicate, a good sort of level of how much your body is having to work. You can also do very simple cortisol tests as well. I mean, there's a number of different functional tests which I use within my clinic, but there's one called the cortisol saliva test, which you can order, and it's spitting into a pot basically at different times of the day, and then you can measure the levels of cortisol and therefore look at your cortisol response. So there are a number of different sort of practical biochemical markers that you can look at around chronic stress. But also I would check in with how you're feeling. There's no doubt that, as I say, we're all under stress. It's how we relate, how we react to stress, how we perceive that stress that actually really impacts us. So, if we find that, for a few days, going into a few weeks, that everything is just finding being a bit of a drag, you're finding it very difficult to get motivated, maybe finding it difficult to wake up in the mornings or to get going, maybe you're very tearful, feeling very emotional for no apparent reason, or more emotional than normal, then of course that's your body sort of really sending out signals as well that things are out of balance. So, I think it depends as to, what you would, sort of the way that you would like to sort of rate that, within yourself. But, certainly I would say that, every patient that I see and every person that I work with, is working with, chronic levels of stress of some type or another. And then what we're doing is we're looking at how we can biochemically balance that, but also how we can emotionally support that as well. As I say, the perception of stress is, as important as the stress factor as well, the actual factor that's causing the stress. So, very important to sort of delineate between the two. But yeah, chronic stress is, if after, sort of a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, you're still feeling, like, things are very tough, you're noticing changes in your body as well. Chronic stress will elicit, sort of, or depress the immune system. So maybe you're getting, greater levels of, sort of infection. Maybe you're getting flare-ups of eczema, for example. That's a very common one as well. Of course, we've not really talked about the endocannabinoid system in the skin, but how important as well. Our skin is a very good indicator of how we're feeling. Our gut health as well. As soon as we get stressed, our gut will be impacted, either, through IBS type symptoms, irritable bowel type syndrome. So that can be a very good indicator as well of ongoing stress. So, really, what I really see my role is connecting people back with themselves. Really listen to your body. It's trying to tell you on a minute by minute basis, but certainly on a daily basis and on a weekly basis, that things, need tweaking, need a balance. So, it's really about finding that balance within yourself and listening to yourself as well. So, yeah, it's a good question. What is chronic stress? But I would say, certainly address it as well. You can't sweep stress under the carpet or the responses for your body to stress. You can be under a very stressful situation for a long period of time, but you can't, just carry on. You need to be adjusting and adapting to allow your body, that ability to repair and allow your body that ability to remain within a stasis as well. So what would you suggest for someone suffering with arthritis that has never tried CBD before? Yeah, so again, there's lots of different products, aren't there, on the market, and I know there's been some really good talks today. So I would certainly say go back and have a look at the CBD Live auditorium, because I know all of the talks are recorded as well. So, you know, please feel free to have a look back through there. Personally, what I recommend with CBD food supplements would be an oil. So that's a sublingual oil, which means you put it under the tongue, because that's really one of the best ways of getting CBD cannabinoids into the body. You know, they're based in oils, so they're directly absorbed from under the tongue. I would look for really good quality products. So, you know, maybe do a little bit of research, you know, around what's out there. To say, look at CBD Live. There's been some great companies there. I certainly work with a company that, you know, I sort of fully endorse and recommend the products as well. You know, one, you know, company that has been really, you know, looking into the quality of the products, you know, right through to the end product that has what it says. So, you know, definitely recommend having a look there. The company that I use is 45, so 45.com, the words 45. So they have some brilliant products there. I would recommend starting low, go slow. So that means taking a lower dose product containing, or a product containing lower doses of CBD, something like a 500 milligram oil is a good starting place. And you're just taking probably a couple of drops under the tongue. I mean, you know, I can't say on an individual basis, but yeah, that's kind of quite a common starting place. And then you're increasing the CBD across the course of every few days, because you're bringing balance back to your endocannabinoid system. You know, remember me saying, when you're taking cannabinoids, they're not acting as a blunt tool like a drug does. You know, they're not just switching the endocannabinoid system on, they're bringing balance back into the body's own endocannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system as well. So, you know, always start low, go slow with CBD as a food supplement. You know, build up. And as I say, you can use things like muscle rubs as well, or topical skin topicals with CBD. You know, we do have receptors, CBD receptors in our skin, or cannabinoid receptors in our skin. So those types of rubs can be very useful as well in combination. So those are kind of my two go-tos. You know, either a mouth spray or drops, so you get good absorption of the oil, and then you can use the topicals as well. So I would definitely recommend, but you know, you looking at a holistic program as well. You know, there's some great studies around arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and moving to a more plant-based diet. And I've done several webinars on this topic around inflammation and endocannabinoid system and diets, and it really does respond very well, different types of inflammatory arthritis, to dietary changes. So that might be worth looking into as well. So for someone who suffers from IBS, what would be the best way to consume CBD, and how long would it take to work roughly? Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I've heard lots of anecdotal reports, you know, around ingesting cannabinoids and, you know, support for inflammatory bowel disorders. So you can get CBD as capsules as well as oils. So of course you're swallowing those capsules. So, you know, it might be worth looking into ingesting there. In terms of time take to work, it's very difficult. You know, I never put a time frame on it, because everybody is different. However, what I will say is that in my experience, and again, anecdotal experience, you know, observing what happens in patients, that actually, you know, the response can be really quite impressive, you know, from the beginning onwards, you know, because the body is desperate to sort of be back in balance, and the endocannabinoid system is so out of whack. Taking cannabinoids, you know, medicines, food supplements, is actually a really good way of bringing that balance back in. So I would say, you know, really, you know, persevere, you know, really work with the cannabinoid side, but also, you know, all the stuff that I've talked about with IBS as well. You know, it's really important to take a kind of multi-pronged approach as well. And of course, if it feels overwhelming, you know, find a really good integrated practitioner, you know, check in, because you know, we're here to help. So is there anything vegetarian or vegan people need to think about in relation to the endocannabinoid system? Yeah, great question, because you know, again, you know, there's no right or wrong way of sort of eating, you know, sort of diets, you know, that are you know, designed around removing certain food groups, you know. So again, it's just about making sure you've got that balance within the diet that you're eating, you know, when you're choosing a dietary process. So with vegetarian and veganism, well, of course, actually, what we're seeing is that the essential fatty acids are super important. So you've got the really great levels of plant matter, I hope. I mean, I must say, I do still work with some vegetarians. I have one client at the moment that is not keen on vegetables, so we're having to really work at that level. But you've got the really good fiber content. So, really, the gut microbiome of people following a more plant-based diet, is really shown to be more diverse. So, if you're eating a good wide range of plant matter, then you've got that real support there for the endocannabinoid system. What I would say, of course, is really checking in things like essential fatty acids. Now, these come in different guises. So essential fatty acids, yes, are in oily fish. You also find a certain proportion in certain eggs as well. So, if you are following a vegan diet, then of course, you're wanting to look for essential fatty acids in more of the plant-based forms. So linseeds or flax seeds, ground flax seeds, are particularly rich in the omega-3 ratio. So I would always recommend having a tablespoon, 1 to 2 tablespoonfuls of ground flaxseed, mixed into, porridges, smoothies. You can mix it into stews, sprinkle it on salads, really to make sure that you get the good levels of omega-3 essential fatty acids. But just on an aside, hopefully not getting too technical, when you're taking on those types of omega-3 essential fatty acids from flax seeds and nuts, for example, your body still needs to convert them into the active form. So you need good levels of B vitamins. So again, making sure you've got good levels of B12, vitamin B12, for example, especially following a vegan diet, because B12 tends to be more prominent in animal-based proteins and foods. So again, thinking about that balance, thinking about the mix is a really good one. So is coconut oil a baddie or a help to the endocannabinoid system? Yeah, good question. So coconut oil, again, we're talking good quality products here, not products that have just jumped on the bandwagon. We see this, don't we, in the CBD food supplement market. There are so many different products out there, but it's the same with coconut oil, choosing one that has been, well processed from an ethical source as well, sustainable source, very important. So coconut oil is full of medium chain triglycerides, MCTs. So they're absorbed into the body a little bit differently through the guts, not through the lymphatic system, but they can provide, be a great source of energy, for example, and also, different types of triglyceride fats. So what I would say is coconut oil, in the right amount. So, this is not sort of going overboard. This is, up to a tablespoonful a day. It's good for cooking with because it's a solid fat at room temperature. So therefore has a, a good quality, good smoke point, isn't going to create the damaged fats. But in, moderation in the right ratios is going to be supporting the endocannabinoid system, because, it's all part of, getting healthy fats on board to be supporting aspects like the cell membrane, to be supporting aspects like cell signaling as well. So again, it's not going overboard and having lots of coconut oil because you think it's good. It's having that right balance. So I guess, up to a tablespoonful a day. So final question, I think, just checking the time. Yes, I've got a time for another question. So a lot of people take THC mixed with nicotine. Does the negative effect of nicotine outweigh the potentially positive effect of THC? Okay, so nicotine, pure nicotine, again, is not actually a baddie, a bit like THC. So, we kind of demonize THC, certainly in the CBD food supplement world, as something that, we don't want. But, as we know, again, I know I'm talking to like-minded people here, THC, one of the cannabinoids, in the right levels, the right ratios, and that's really key, the right ratios with other cannabinoids can be very supportive in a lot of different health conditions. But as you say, when THC is mixed with nicotine, now nicotine is a bit like THC. Nicotine in its pure form can have benefits. I mean, for nicotine is required for certain signaling pathways in the brain, acetylcholine receptors, for example, in the brain, which are very important in the hippocampus, in learning, in memory, in Alzheimer's disease. So, again, we can see we've got something that can be important. But THC mixed with tobacco, now that's different, of course, because I'm assuming you're talking about nicotine coming from tobacco, and of course then it's all of the bad effects that you get with tobacco. So you get all of the processing negative effects, all of the heavy metals, all of the tar. So that's where the issue can come on board. So THC with nicotine, pure nicotine, which you're not really going to find, is in the right balance, it is going to be okay. But smoking it with tobacco, that's going to, yes, certainly have the negative effects far outweighing the positive effects of the right ratios of THC. So, it's very interesting. I say with ratios with THC, CBD actually blunts the effect of CBD. So we can see then, when I'm talking about ratios, how important it can be. So, it's about getting that balance. And of course, a lot of street marijuana, the cultivars there, they are super, super hybrid THC at the expense of CBD, and kind of that's where the issues are coming. So it's all about balance, and I'm going to end now and just say thank you so much for all of your questions and for attending. And if there's one thing that, I'm absolutely passionate about around the endocannabinoid system, is the fact that it's all about balance. It's all about balance in the physical aspects of our lives, what we're eating, what we're thinking, what we're doing, and it's about balancing our endocannabinoid system as well, because there's no doubt by using diet, lifestyle, and of course cannabinoid medicine at whatever level, be it the food supplement through to medicinal cannabis level, it's going to be supporting our overall short and our long-term health as well. So thank you ever so much to CBD Live for inviting me for the second day here. Thank you to all of you attending. I've really enjoyed your questions, really enjoyed talking to you today. And I would just very much like, if you wish to connect with me, to see you on other events coming up soon as well. So have a great day, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the CBD Live events. Some more great things to come. Thanks very much.